Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to ancient Rome, to the age of marble palaces, burning cities, and the most infamous emperor of them all, Nero. But this isn't the story of his glory or madness as history remembers it. Tonight, you'll live through it as one of his concubines. You'll see the empire not from the throne, but from behind the silk curtains of the Golden House. You'll hear the music that played while Rome burned, feel the cold marble beneath your bare feet, and learn what it truly meant to survive in a world ruled by fear and fire. So before we step into that candlelit palace, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I always love seeing who's wandering through history with me tonight. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let's drift back to ancient Rome, where beauty and terror slept side by side. Your life as a concubine of Emperor Nero, the silk and the smoke. You awaken in the dim light of the Roman dawn. The marble floor beneath you is cool, the kind of cold that seeps into bone long before the morning heat arrives. Outside, the Tiber murmurs lazily, its muddy water catching the faint glow of a reddening sky. You are 20 years old, perhaps 21. You have stopped counting birthdays, and you belong to the emperor. Not as a wife, nor even as a mistress by choice, but as property dressed in silk. In the palace on the Palatine Hill, the air smells of incense and iron. Nero's Rome is loud even when silent. The walls themselves seem to hum with the weight of secrets, the shuffle of sandals, the murmuring of slaves, the soft scrape of bronze basins as attendants prepare the emperor's bath. Every day begins this way, slow, heavy, ritualized. Nothing happens without ceremony. Even boredom is structured here. You were not born to silk. You were born in the provinces, perhaps near Antioch, where the air was thick with spice and dust. Your father traded wool, your mother olives. When the imperial tax collectors came, your family gave more than they could afford. And when soldiers came later, they took more still, including you. The road to Rome was long and silent. You remember the rattling of chains more clearly than the faces of those who walked beside you. In Rome, you were cleaned, oiled, and renamed. No one keeps their true name in the palace. Names are a form of ownership, and yours now belongs to the emperor. Nero prefers names that sound like music, soft vowels that roll easily from his tongue. You were called Lyria, a pretty name for a pretty shadow. The routine of a concubine. Your mornings begin in the women's quarters, the cubiculum mulierum, a low chamber filled with other women who serve similar roles. Entertainers, confidants, and sometimes sacrifices to Nero's whim. The light filters through thin sheets of mica instead of glass, scattering pale gold across painted walls. There is laughter sometimes, but it is brittle. The women speak softly in Greek, Latin, Egyptian, a chorus of subdued nations pressed into service for one man's desire. You rise before the emperor does. The first task is preparation. Attendants bring bowls of milk, honey, and rosewater to wash your face. Your hair is combed with ivory teeth, then wound into curls with iron rods heated over flame. The process smells of singed oil and perfume. Silk is draped around you, layer upon layer, not for comfort, but for display. The fabrics itch in summer, suffocate in winter, and yet no one dares complain. You are an ornament, a symbol of Rome's reach. Even your discomfort serves the empire's grandeur. The palace corridors stretch endlessly, mosaics of gods and beasts beneath your bare feet. At each corner stands a guard in polished armor, silent and expressionless. You have learned not to look them in the eyes. It is safer that way. In the distance, the faint echoes of Nero's lyre drift through the air. He fancies himself a god of music, though few dare to say otherwise. When he plays, everyone listens. When he stops, everyone breathes again. A city of contradictions. From your window, the city sprawls endlessly. Temples, taverns, and tenements stacked like bones. The smell of the forum reaches even here. Roasting meat, sweat, wine, and sewage. Below the Palatine Hill, Rome lives its loud, dirty life. But up here, the world is quiet. Too quiet. Every word is measured, every glance potentially fatal. You hear stories whispered among the servants. How Nero watched the city burn while playing his instrument. How he forced senators to applaud his poetry under threat of death. Perhaps they are true. Perhaps they are lies. It hardly matters. Truth is irrelevant in an empire of fear. What matters is the illusion, and you are part of that illusion. Your duties are rarely spoken aloud, but always understood. You must appear whenever summoned, and disappear when forgotten. You dine at his table, but do not eat unless invited. You listen when he speaks, but you never respond unless asked. You smile when he performs his plays. Terrible, endless performances where he dresses as gods and heroes while the audience feigns awe. You clap until your hands ache. You laugh when he laughs. And when he tires of you, you bow and retreat like a servant fading into shadow. The inner machinery of power. The palace is not just a home. It is a machine of control. Every corridor hides a watcher. Every servant carries a rumor. There are secret passages used by messengers, and chambers beneath chambers where the screams of the condemned are muffled by stone. You have seen the glint of blood beneath the marble tiles, quickly scrubbed away. You have heard the whisper of poisoners discussing doses of hemlock and belladonna. Power here smells faintly of rot. Senators come and go, their faces pale with the effort of pretending loyalty. Artists flatter Nero's vanity. Philosophers debate nothing of consequence. Even the guards know better than to believe in justice. Rome may rule the world, but inside these walls, one man's madness is the only law. At night, Nero holds banquets that stretch into dawn. You have seen tables groaning with roasted peacocks, honeyed dormice, and amphorae of imported wine. Musicians play endlessly as jesters dance in gold masks. The emperor sits reclined, his eyes glazed, his laughter booming across the hall. He likes to feed his favorites by hand, sometimes with grapes, sometimes with secrets. You sit beside him, smiling as if your heart does not race with fear. Private moments of emptiness. When the torches burn low and the laughter fades, you return to your chamber. Alone, you remove the layers of silk and jewels, feeling lighter with every piece that falls. Beneath the perfumes, your skin smells of smoke and sweat. The mirror before you is polished bronze, distorted, wavering. The face you see is both yours and not yours. You no longer remember how you looked before Rome claimed you. Sometimes you dream of the sea. You imagine standing on the docks of Antioch again, watching ships vanish into the horizon. You wonder if your mother still lights a lamp for you each night, or if she has forgotten. Memory is dangerous here. To survive, you must let the past dissolve. And yet, when the wind carries the scent of olive oil and salt, your chest tightens. The world beyond these walls still exists, even if you no longer belong to it. The Emperor's eyes. When Nero looks at you, he sees reflection, not a person. You are a mirror of his own vanity. His moods shift with terrifying speed, affection turning to rage in the span of a heartbeat. You have learned to read his silence, to anticipate his storms. A wrong word can end a life. Once, a concubine laughed at the wrong time during his recital. The next day, she was gone. No one dared ask where. And yet, there are moments, fleeting, fragile, when he seems almost human. Late at night, he sometimes speaks softly, telling you of his fears, his dreams of being remembered not as a tyrant, but as an artist. You listen, saying nothing. You know that pity would be fatal. Still, in those rare, quiet moments, you glimpse the hollow child beneath the crown, a boy who never learned to be loved without control. Rome's restless heart. The city outside never sleeps. The crowds chant in the amphitheater, the soldiers march in the streets, and the fires of the night markets burn endlessly. You hear it all through the thin walls of the palace. The heartbeat of Rome, restless and eternal. You envy them, those nameless masses who can live and die without ever seeing the emperor's face. Freedom, even in filth, must taste sweeter than gilded captivity. Each day, the same rituals repeat. You live not by seasons, but by Nero's moods. You exist in suspended time, a painted figure in an endless fresco. You begin to understand that history is not written by the living, but by survivors. And you, quietly, intend to survive. But then, one morning, something changes. The palace smells of smoke, real smoke, not incense. The guards are restless, their armor clattering like distant thunder. In the corridors, whispers bloom like mold. The city is burning. And as you stand by the window, watching a column of black rise from the horizon, you wonder, not if Rome will survive, but whether you will. The fire and the feast. The first time you smell the fire, it doesn't seem real. Rome always smells of smoke, from bakeries, forges, and 1,000 cooking fires. But this is different. Sharper, bitter, like burning pitch and cedar. At first, the servants whisper that it began in the market district near the Circus Maximus. A careless spark, perhaps, or maybe lightning. You tell yourself it will die out before morning. Rome has burned before. Rome always recovers. But by dawn, the sky is a solid sheet of red. From the high windows of the Palatine, you can see whole neighborhoods glowing like embers in a hearth. The wind carries sparks across the rooftops, leaping street to street faster than any prayer could stop it. The air tastes of metal and salt. You press a linen cloth over your mouth, but the soot finds you anyway. Tiny black flakes drifting through the air like the remains of a book being erased. The emperor's delight. Nero does not seem afraid. When he first hears of the fire, he claps his hands like a child hearing news of a festival. At last, he cries, a stage grand enough for tragedy. He orders his musicians to prepare the lyres. He commands servants to light torches on the balconies to better see the spectacle. You stand behind him as he gazes at the burning city, his eyes wide and unblinking. He calls for wine. He calls for an audience. By midnight, the emperor is performing, dressed in flowing robes of gold, crowned with laurel. He stands on the palace terrace as the wind carries the heat of the burning city below. Flames climb into the clouds, roaring like an ocean. Nero lifts his arms and begins to sing verses of Troy's destruction, words he claims to have written himself. His voice cracks, but no one dares look away. The courtiers clap on cue. The guards remain expressionless. And you bow your head and pretend not to see the reflection of the inferno in his eyes. The city in ash. For 6 days, the fire devours everything. Temples collapse. Statues crack. Markets vanish. The heat is so intense that even bronze melts, running like wax down the streets. Refugees pour toward the riverbanks, dragging carts piled with what little they can carry. You can see them from the hills, tiny dark figures against a world of flame. You hear the screams faintly at night when the wind shifts. But inside the palace, everything continues as before. The servants still bring meals. The musicians still play. The emperor still demands applause. Rumors begin to swirl that Nero ordered the fire himself, that he plans to rebuild Rome as a city fit for the gods, with his own palace at its heart. You don't know the truth. No one does. But you begin to notice the unease, the glances between guards, the hurried whispers of scribes. Even the marble walls seem to sweat in the heat. Life in the gilded prison. The women's quarters grow quieter. Some of the other concubines are dismissed, sent away without explanation. Others simply vanish. You wonder if they were freed or silenced. You begin spending hours by the window, staring at the ruin below. There is no comfort in the beauty of it, yet you cannot look away. Rome burns like a living thing, roaring, shifting, devouring itself. Nights are worse. The air is thick and dry, and ash drifts in like snow. You wake coughing, throat raw, lungs burning. The palace doctors walk the halls with cloths over their faces, muttering about the fumes. You catch your reflection in the bronze mirror and see black smudges under your eyes. You think of home, of your mother's olive groves, the smell of earth after rain. You try to remember the sound of the sea, but it feels impossibly distant, like a dream from another life. Nero's golden dream. When the fires finally die, the city is unrecognizable. Entire districts are gone. The great temples lie in ruin. Thousands are dead or missing, and yet Nero seems reborn. He orders architects to his chambers. He speaks of rebuilding Rome, not in brick, but in marble and gold. A new city, he says, worthy of a god's reign. He sketches grand courtyards and fountains, theaters and gardens. He names it Domus Aurea, the Golden House. As he speaks, his voice trembles with excitement, the way a poet might tremble before his first verse. But behind his dreams lies a deeper shadow. He blames the fire on others, foreigners, sects, strange Eastern cults. He needs someone to suffer for Rome's pain. Soon, soldiers march through the streets, rounding up the accused. You hear the word whispered by servants. Christiani, the followers of a crucified man from Judea. No one in the palace knows what they believe, only that Nero has chosen them as scapegoats. The gardens of punishment. One evening, The emperor invites his court to a grand illumination. The gardens of his villa are filled with guests, senators, musicians, poets, and courtesans. Tables overflow with food and wine. But beyond the laughter, something burns brighter than the torches. You see them, men and women tied to wooden posts, their bodies wrapped in oil-soaked cloth. When the sun sets, Nero raises his hand, and the flames bloom. The firelight glows across his face as he declares, "Let their faith light the night of Rome." The guests watch in silence, eyes wide, hands trembling. Some turn away. Most do not. You feel your stomach twist. The smell is unbearable. The screams rise like music, and Nero begins to hum softly to himself. That night, you wash your hands again and again until the skin cracks. The water runs red. The sound of their cries lingers long after the last torch has gone out. The cracks in the empire. After that, the palace grows quieter still. Musicians play softer. Servants avoid eye contact. Even the senators speak in hushed tones. The air feels heavy, as if the fire still smolders beneath the marble floors. Nero becomes restless. He walks the corridors at night, muttering to himself. You hear him speaking to invisible critics, praising his own performances, demanding applause from no one. He begins composing again, tragedies about the fall of empires, the madness of kings. He insists you listen. He reads aloud by candlelight, his voice breaking with emotion, his hands trembling. You nod, you smile, you murmur admiration, because silence might mean death. Sometimes, when he grows tired, he asks if you believe he is loved. You do not know what to say, so you tell him what he wants to hear. Yes, my lord, Rome loves you. He smiles, satisfied, for a moment. Then his eyes narrow. But do you? You freeze. The candlelight flickers between you like a knife. You force yourself to nod again, to speak softly. Yes. Only then does he laugh and turn away. The weight of silence. You begin to realize that survival is not about beauty or obedience. It is about silence. You learn which corridors to avoid, which questions to never answer. You speak in fragments, if at all. You hold your breath when he enters a room. You pray to know God, not the old ones, not the new. Prayer feels too loud. At night, the palace walls creak as if breathing. You lie awake, counting the flickers of the torchlight against the ceiling. You wonder if the city outside has begun to heal, or if the ashes are still warm. Sometimes, you hear laughter in the distance, strange, hollow laughter that echoes through empty halls. You never know if it's Nero or a ghost. The whisper of escape. One morning, a slave named Damaris, a quiet girl from Alexandria, brings you water. She hesitates before speaking. They say the emperor fears a revolt, she whispers. That some senators have fled. You look at her carefully. And you? She shakes her head. I have nowhere to go. You envy her honesty. You, too, have nowhere to go. But sometimes, when the wind blows from the west, you imagine the sea again, vast and indifferent. You imagine walking until your feet touch the surf and letting the waves erase everything you once were. That night, you make a choice. You will not die here. Not in silk, not in silence, but in Rome. Escape is a dangerous dream. The palace is a maze, guarded by fear more than walls. Still, you begin to notice things. The gaps between patrols, the servants' doors, the hidden passages used by messengers. You watch, you wait, you memorize. The Emperor's new theater. Then, one evening, Nero calls for you again. The fire is long past, the ashes swept away, but he still speaks of it fondly, as though it were art. He leads you into a new hall, recently built, hung with gold fabric and marble columns. "This," he says proudly, "is my new theater. Here I will perform as the gods did." You look around. The hall is empty except for a few musicians and slaves. At the far end stands a small stage, raised slightly above the marble floor. Nero climbs it and gestures for silence. He begins to recite a poem, something about rebirth, light from fire, the purification of Rome. His voice wavers, but he believes every word. And as you watch, you realize he is not mad in the way people say. He is something worse, a man who believes his cruelty is creation, his destruction divine. When he finishes, he looks at you expectantly. "Do you understand?" he asks. You bow your head. "Yes, my lord." He smiles faintly. "Good. Then you will stay close. I need someone who truly sees." The last reflection. Later that night, you return to your chamber. You stare again into the bronze mirror. Your reflection shimmers in the dim light. A stranger's face, painted in candle glow. You touch the surface. The metal is cool. You whisper to it softly, "How much longer?" The palace groans around you like an old ship. Somewhere far off, a lyre begins to play again. The same melody Nero played while the city burned. You close your eyes and listen. The sound is beautiful and terrible, the sound of an empire convincing itself that it still lives. And you wonder, when fire consumes marble and gold, what becomes of those made of flesh? The fall of the Golden House. When you next see Rome, it is gleaming again, not with the warmth of life, but with the cold polish of ambition. The fire that consumed the city has been replaced by something even more dangerous, Nero's dream. The Domus Aurea, the Golden House, rises like a mirage from the ashes. Miles of marble corridors, fountains that pour wine, and rooms with ceilings gilded in gold leaf. Its walls shimmer even in torchlight. And yet, beneath the shine, you can feel it, the pulse of rot. You walk barefoot across mosaic floors that depict oceans, gods, and monsters. Somewhere between them, you realize you are one of those monsters, created for someone else's story, painted to please an emperor who no longer distinguishes between flesh and myth. The new Rome. Everywhere you look, artisans labor without rest. Painters cover ceilings with constellations. Sculptors carve Nero's face onto every statue, replacing gods with his image. The air smells of plaster dust, sweat, and incense. At the center of it all stands Nero himself, barefoot, radiant, and restless. He calls this place his gift to the people, a new Rome, purified by fire. But no one believes him. You see it in the way senators bow too deeply, the way soldiers glance at one another when his back is turned. He wanders through the halls like a man haunted by his own creation. One moment, he speaks of poetry and immortality. The next, he lashes out in rage. His laughter echoes through the golden corridors, too loud, too long. It's not joy, it's defiance against the silence that follows. At night, he invites you to walk the gardens. They are beautiful, ponds reflecting torchlight, marble nymphs frozen in dance, but the air feels wrong. Somewhere beyond the hedges, you hear the faint sound of chains. Prisoners building paradise. The whisper of rebellion. Whispers begin to seep through the marble walls like smoke. Senators plotting in private villas. Generals muttering among their men. The Praetorian Guard, once loyal, now divided. Nero knows. He always knows. But instead of fear, it stirs in him a strange excitement. He begins to write a new tragedy, the fall of a tyrant. You listen as he recites it in candlelight, his voice trembling between pride and madness. He calls it his greatest work. You wonder if he realizes its prophecy. One morning, word spreads that an uprising has begun in Gaul. The name Vindex ripples through the palace like a curse. Nero dismisses it as another faraway nuisance, but you notice his eyes twitch when no one's watching. Then comes worse news. The Senate whispers of betrayal, and Rome itself begins to turn against him. The emperor starts sleeping less. He walks the palace corridors at night, his footsteps echoing like a ghost's. He asks again and again, "Do they love me still?" No one dares to answer. The disappearing court. One by one, the courtiers vanish. Some flee to their villas outside the city. Others are found dead, accused of treason. Even musicians and servants disappear overnight. The palace grows emptier, colder, quieter. Nero's moods shift like the weather. One day he hosts a feast in his grand dining hall. Roast swans, figs dripping with honey, dancers moving to the sound of flutes. The next day, he wanders alone, muttering that the gods have betrayed him. You stay silent. You have learned that silence is armor. Then one night, the torches go out. Not all at once, but gradually. Corridor by corridor, the palace darkens. By morning, you realize the emperor's guard has fled. The night of the flight, Nero orders you to his chamber. His robe is undone, his face pale and streaked with sweat. The gold leaf from the ceiling flakes down onto his hair like ash reborn. "They want me dead," he whispers. The Senate, the guard, all of them. He stares at you as if searching for truth in your eyes. "But I am an artist. They cannot kill art." You say nothing. He begins to laugh, then weep, then laugh again. He clutches your hand. "You will come with me," he says. "We'll go to the east, to Egypt. They still love me there." You nod, because nodding is safer than truth. By midnight, he's disguised in a cloak, riding through back alleys with only a few loyal servants. You follow, not by choice, but because you know what happens to those who stay behind. The streets of Rome are silent now. The same streets that once cheered his parades now hold their breath. Dogs bark in the distance. Somewhere, a door slams. You ride through the city that burned for him, past ruins that still smell of smoke. The abandoned villa. At dawn, you reach a small villa outside the city walls, an estate once belonging to one of his freedmen. It's empty now, stripped bare. You can see the fear in the servants' eyes. They know the end is near. Nero paces the floor, muttering lines from his plays. "What an artist dies in me," he repeats, as if the words might turn death into theater. He demands a meal, but no one moves. He demands wine, but the amphora is empty. You stand in the doorway, watching him unravel. For the first time, he looks small, not the god emperor, not the tyrant, just a man terrified of silence. Outside, the sound of hooves. Soldiers approach. You can see their helmets glinting in the rising light. He hears them too. His face goes still. "It is time," he murmurs. He looks at you. Do not watch. But you do. You see him lift the dagger, hesitate, then press it to his throat. His hand trembles. He cannot finish it. A servant, trembling, weeping, helps him. The sound is quick. The silence after is endless. You do not cry. The emperor is dead. When they find his body, they wrap it hurriedly in cloth and bury it in a shallow grave among the weeds. No ceremony, no crown, no music. The emperor who once demanded applause from the world now lies under dirt, alone. The soldiers whisper prayers they do not believe. Then they leave. You stay behind for a moment longer. The wind moves through the tall grass, warm and dry. You kneel, not out of love, but out of exhaustion. For the first time in years, the air does not smell of perfume or fire. It smells of earth. You take off the last of your jewelry, the golden bracelets he gave you, the ones that marked you as his possession, and lay them on the grave. They look dull in the morning light. Lyria, he once called you, but that was never your name. You speak your true name softly now, a word you haven't heard aloud in years. It sounds foreign, almost holy. Then you stand, turn toward the city, and begin to walk. The quiet road. The road back to Rome is lined with silence. Burned villas, empty fields, fallen statues. Birds pick at the ruins. Somewhere in the distance, the Tiber glitters faintly, unbothered by the death of emperors. You walk barefoot until your feet bleed. You pass peasants repairing broken walls, children chasing smoke from their homes. None recognize you, and you are glad. When night falls, you find a broken fountain and wash the soot from your hands. The water is cold and tastes of stone. For the first time, you feel the world turning without him. Slow, steady, indifferent. You are free. But freedom, you realize, is quiet. You look up at the stars, the same ones painted on the ceilings of the Golden House, and wonder how long it will take before Rome forgets his name. You close your eyes, listening to the night wind through the ruins, and think, perhaps history is merciful after all. The ashes of an empire. When you return to Rome, the world has changed, or perhaps it is you who has. The roads that once shimmered with marble dust now lie cracked and quiet. The air still smells faintly of ash, though the fires are long gone. The city breathes again, but its heartbeat feels different, slower, older, uncertain. You walk barefoot through the ruins. The stones remember. Each step stirs memories of what was lost. Laughter, cruelty, music, screams, all layered together like sediment of history. The people you pass do not recognize you. You are neither slave nor noble, neither Roman nor foreigner. You are simply another survivor. The emperor's shadow. They whisper his name still, Nero, not with reverence, but with a kind of superstitious fear. Some say he fled to the east and will return with legions. Others say he lives among the poor, disguised, waiting for the moment to reclaim his throne. But most know the truth. The emperor is gone, and his golden dream lies buried beneath dust. You stand on a hill overlooking the remains of the Domus Aurea. Once, its gilded halls blazed with light. Now, its ceilings are blackened, its fountains dry, its gardens swallowed by weeds. The sun catches a glint of something beneath the rubble, a fragment of mosaic, perhaps part of his face. You look away. History moves quickly. Already, men in the Senate speak of restoration, of rebuilding the Republic, of forgetting. But you have learned that Rome never forgets. It simply buries what it cannot face beneath another layer of marble. the lives left behind. The women you once lived beside are scattered. Some were freed, others remarried or vanished entirely. You see one of them, Damaris, the slave from Alexandria, working at a small stall in the market. Her hands are rough, her face older, but when she sees you, she smiles faintly. You lived, she says. So did you, you answer. You share a loaf of coarse bread between you, sitting on the broken steps of what used to be a temple. The bread tastes of ash and salt, but it is enough. There are no guards now, no titles, no golden chains. Only people, rebuilding with what they have left. As the sun lowers, you hear laughter from the nearby street, children chasing one another through the ruins. Their joy feels almost defiant. The city will rise again. It always does. But this time, you hope it remembers not the power of emperors, but the quiet endurance of those who survived them. A city reborn in dust. In the months that follow, you find work in a small dye workshop near the river. You spend your days mixing ochre and madder into clay bowls, stirring slowly until the colors run smooth. It is quiet work. Your hands, once adorned with gold, are now stained with pigment. You prefer them this way. Sometimes the old songs return to you, the ones Nero sang while Rome burned. You hum them softly as you grind the dyes, not in tribute, but as a way of reclaiming them. The melodies no longer belong to him. They belong to you now, to the city, to the ones who endured. The workshop is small, lit only by a single window and a hanging oil lamp. In the evenings, you close your eyes and listen to the river. Its sound is steady, indifferent, eternal. For the first time in years, you feel safe. Echoes of the past. One day, a customer brings a piece of parchment. On it, he wants painted a scene, the death of Nero, he says. You hesitate, brush in hand. The memory is vivid. The trembling dagger, the silence that followed, the earth swallowing him whole. What should he look like, you ask? The man shrugs. A tyrant, perhaps. A madman. It doesn't matter. It's only history now. You study the blank parchment. Slowly, you begin to paint. But you do not paint madness or grandeur. You paint a face almost peaceful, eyes closed, a faint smile, the last flicker of a man who once believed he was divine. The colors are muted, ochre, olive, soot black. You paint not for him, but for the world that must remember. When you finish, the man examines it silently. Strange, he says. He looks almost human. You nod. He was. The quiet truth. That night, you walk to the riverbank. The moon is pale and wide, rippling over the surface of the Tiber. You carry a small bronze mirror, the one that once reflected a stranger's face. You look into it one last time. The woman staring back at you is older, but her eyes are clear. You smile faintly, then lower the mirror into the water. It sinks without a sound. The ripples fade, and with them, the last reflection of the life you left behind. You sit on the bank until dawn. Birds stir in the reeds. The first light touches the rooftops of the rebuilt city, softer now, humbler. Somewhere a bell rings. Rome wakes again, and you understand what history never tells. That empires fall, but people endure. That beauty burns, but quiet survival, the simple act of continuing, is the truest kind of defiance. Epilogue, the forgotten ones. Years later, no one remembers your name. Scholars will write of Nero's cruelty, his fire, his fall. They will debate whether he was mad or misunderstood. They will list his lovers, his victims, his crimes, but you will not appear among them. You are one of the countless who lived in the shadows of greatness, whose stories filled the spaces between the famous. But perhaps that is fitting. You were born to silence, survived through silence, and returned to it by choice. And yet, somewhere deep within the city, your presence lingers, in the faint scent of dye from the river workshops, in the sound of a woman's song carried on the wind, in the soft flicker of lamplight against the walls at dusk. That is how history remembers you, not in marble, but in whispers, not in gold, but in warmth. The ashes of Rome settled long ago. The empire rebuilt, the songs changed, and the river continued to flow. But every time the wind blows across the ruins, it carries a faint echo of that age, the sound of a lyre, the sigh of a concubine watching a city burn, and the quiet, enduring hum of survival. Because in the end, history is not just the story of emperors. It is the story of those who lived long enough to outlast them.